Why would someone cling to a painful illusion instead of facing the truth about themselves? Why is it so hard to accept our own mistakes, even when the consequences are clear? And how far can guilt shape the way a person sees reality? These are the questions at the core of Shutter Island. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the main character refuses to confront his own guilt. You'll see how denial can protect the mind, but also distort identity. And you'll gain insight into how the film explores the human tendency to hide from uncomfortable truths. This isn't about plot twists. It's about why the character behaves the way he does and what that tells us about ourselves. The story centers on Teddy Daniels, a U.S. Marshal investigating a missing patient on a remote psychiatric island. On the surface, he appears focused and determined, trying to solve a mystery. But beneath that, Teddy carries a heavy past. He lost his wife in a fire, and he feels responsible. He is already in a fragile psychological state, influenced by trauma and grief. This setup is important. It explains why his mind reacts differently to stress and fear. Teddy's situation creates the perfect conditions for denial to take hold. His mind struggles between reality and the version of events it wants to accept. The question is, why does he reject evidence and logic in favor of a version of himself that is easier to live with? To understand Teddy, we need to look at his psychological state. He is overwhelmed by guilt. The death of his wife was something he could not prevent. In his mind, he caused it. Guilt often triggers denial. It is easier for the brain to invent a narrative where the pain is someone else's fault, or where he can be a hero. This explains his obsession with solving the missing patient case. It's not just a job, it's a distraction. It's a way to avoid looking at the truth about himself. When confronted with confusing or threatening situations, Teddy's mind interprets them through his own emotional lens. Threats or inconsistencies become evidence of a conspiracy rather than signs that he might be wrong. This is a defense mechanism called projection. By attributing danger and deception to others, he avoids facing internal conflict. Denial and projection work together. Teddy refuses to see his own failures because acknowledging them would break his sense of identity. He clings to the idea that he is a lawman, a protector, and an investigator. This identity shields him from guilt, but it also isolates him from reality. Every interaction with the staff and patients challenges his perception, but instead of reconsidering, he doubles down. The brain often prioritizes emotional survival over factual accuracy. Why is this important? Because it shows a universal human behavior. When guilt is too intense, the mind can restructure reality to reduce immediate pain. This also explains why Teddy is drawn to danger. Confronting external threats allows him to feel in control. It is easier to chase a criminal than to accept personal responsibility. The more he tries to solve the external mystery, the less he faces the internal one. The film uses this pattern to explore how denial can be both protective and destructive. It also raises another question. If identity is built around denial, what happens when the illusion collapses? The turning point comes when the layers of Teddy's mind start to unravel. He begins to see inconsistencies that even his denial cannot explain. The realization that he is actually Andrew Laetis, the man responsible for his wife's death, starts to surface. This is a psychological peak. Denial can no longer fully protect him. Here, the conflict shifts from external investigation to internal confrontation. His mind faces a choice: accept the truth and collapse under guilt, or retreat back into an illusion. The film leaves the question open. Does he truly accept reality, or does he consciously choose to return to denial? This moment highlights a key point about human behavior. People often know the truth on some level, but may actively choose not to act on it. Why? Because facing guilt can feel unbearable. Denial can seem like survival. This turning point is the climax of his internal struggle, not the story itself. The secondary angle, identity, helps us understand the broader message. Teddy's struggle shows how identity is not fixed. It can be constructed around beliefs, memories, and even lies we tell ourselves. His lawman identity is a protective mask. It gives him purpose and control. But it is fragile because it is built on denial. The film demonstrates that when guilt or trauma is too strong, people may subconsciously alter their identity to cope. This connects to real human behavior. Many people avoid accountability or reinterpret their actions to maintain self-esteem. Shutter Island also explores the tension between reality and perception. The mind can create a coherent story, even if it is false, to avoid unbearable emotions. Understanding this makes Teddy's choices more than plot points. They are psychological case studies. Why do people hide from the truth? Often because the truth threatens the core of who they think they are. By observing Teddy, we see how denial and identity are intertwined. One can't fully understand guilt without seeing its impact on self-conception. So, why do people sometimes choose the comfort of denial over the weight of reality? Shutter Island doesn't give a simple answer. It asks us to consider the cost of facing guilt versus the cost of living in illusion. It reminds us that identity can be shaped by the lies we accept, and denial can feel like protection, even when it isolates us from truth. The bigger question remains: if you were in Teddy's position, would you choose to confront your guilt, or would you find a way to live with the lie? Subscribe for more movie explanations like this.